Hello, welcome back. Welcome to the Hire Rockstar Talent podcast. Today we're going to talk about quiet quitting. What is this thing and is it even real? But first, I want you to do three things for me before we get started. I want you to like this video, this podcast. I want you to hit subscribe, and I want you to hit that notification bell so as we drop new podcasts, you can keep an eye on us because we got some good stuff we're going to be talking about coming up in this episode and many episodes after it. So quiet quitting. What is this? Is this a real thing? So when I first heard this term, I immediately, I said, I know exactly what this is. Like, this makes so much sense. It's all in the name, quiet quitting, right? It's all those people who just disappear, they quit, they don't say anything, they text message, hey, I'm not gonna be able to work anymore, blah, 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 whatever the excuse is, right? Or, the earth's just flat, they just fall off the end, never to be seen again. They don't call, they don't, nothing, right? They send someone in to pick up their check. We see this in retail and restaurant operations over and over and over again. So, the people that they can do everything, right? These people, right, that can do everything, and then the minute they start working, the grandma dies, there's no car, they can't get a ride, all of these excuses and stuff happen, right? But this is what I assumed that this term meant, but the more I dug in, the more I kind of really got into it and listened to more material and read more articles on it, there is a much, much scarier side to this, and it's really shocking. I got some real good information from Gallop, and Gallop says that 50% of our entire workforce, half of our entire workforce, is quiet quitting today. And now that I've really put some terminology behind this concept of quiet quitting, I think it's actually more than 50%. We're going to kind of dive into that. So what is quiet quitting? So Gallup defines quiet quitting as, I'm going to read the exact definition here, as an approach to work in which individuals meet the minimum requirements of their job description, but nothing more. No discretionary effort. They don't go above and beyond at all. So this is a problem, right? If half of our team is not engaged, this is a problem. And especially where in restaurant and retail, it's essential that you have urgency and you connect with your coworkers and you meet the needs of your guests. If you don't have that urgency and if you're not committed and present for that, this is bad, right? And think about when you go on social media, what you see, millions and millions of people, they're showing all the shenanigans they're doing, all the screwing off, They're doing things to customers' products. They're filming themselves at the drive-thru, closing the store. Everybody's dancing on the counters, right? Over and over and over again, you're seeing millions and millions of these posts. So this is bad, right? This disengagement, this theft, this fooling around. And when I say theft of time, right? Business owners are footing the bill for all this, right? And ultimately, where does this end up? This ends up into the customer's pricing of goods and services. It's all a domino effect, right? And this is costing companies, this disengagement is costing companies tens of millions of dollars. It's bad. Let's break down basically working society into three categories. The first category is engaged, right? This is people that want to be there and they really care. Not engaged, this is where the quiet quitters are. Most of the quiet quitters are in this not engaged phase. This place where they're just doing their job, nothing more. They don't go above and beyond at all. And then you have the real dangerous one, the actively disengaged. These are the people that are really bad and they bring others down with them. This not engaged, the quiet quitters, right? These are the people that they're not present for the work. They just simply are trading time for money. No energy, no passion. Right? So 50% of the workers are not engaged. Think about that, right? 20% of the workers are actively disengaged, and the other 30% are engaged. So essentially, this means 3 out of 4 people are either not engaged or actively disengaged. 3 out of 4 of every employee. Man, we're up shit's creek without a paddle. That is really bad. It's not good news for employers going forward. Like, this is not good news. So what happens when employers, they're looking at this and they're saying to themselves, Mingya, sorry, that's an Italian term that we say where I live. What does it mean to us in dollars and cents? And it's really hard to identify and answer that question because a lot of these things, they're blended into categories of the P&L statement, right? So some of them drop on food, and some of them drop on labor, and some of them drop on waste, and yes, but there's things that just aren't in there, or they're part of something else. So it's really hard to pinpoint and see it on the P&L. Where you really see it is at the bottom line because there's not enough money there. But then there's things that don't fall on the P&L. And I think we overlook this more and more as operators because, we're just trying to make everything work. But where does your health fall on a P&L statement? Think about that, right? Where does you missing your kid's soccer game fall on a P&L statement? Where does you not being able to go and have a date night with your wife and keep that connection at home, or your husband, whichever, where is that on the P&L statement? It's nowhere. It's nowhere. So these problems are weighing on business owners very heavily, right? So what happens is the business owners, they start to get these stories in their mind, right? There's these frustrations, things that they're thinking about, the things that keep them up at night, and some of the things are things like, how am I being screwed today? Right? So this is a real problem that every business owner is saying to themselves, right? How are we making any money if half the people or 3/4 of the people out front aren't engaged? How do we make any money at all? Right? Who's taking care of our customers? If people are taking care of our customers that don't care, how do the customers come back? What happens when an employee doesn't do what they're supposed to with a customer? You know what's funny with them, some of the employees that we're talking about is that when they're a customer somewhere else, say they go to, another establishment, a food or retail establishment, they have an expectation as a customer, as a guest of what they want, how they want to be treated. And then they come work for us and they become the person that they don't like. Right? When they get mistreated somewhere else, then they come work for us and they get frustrated. They actually become that person. They flip themselves on the other side of the counter and then they become that asshole that they hated. Right? So really, there's a high level that many of our employees are hypocrites. So, what happens, again, another thought going through the employer's mind is what happens if the disengaged employee pisses off someone? In the old days, we used to say, you got to be careful. You upset a customer, they'll go tell 4 of their friends or 9 of their friends or whatever the little saying was. But it's actually worse today because now people have 100,000 followers on social media. So now they go drop it and 100,000 people see it. It's more than just 3 or 4 of their friends, that are their arm's length network. It's much more than that. It goes beyond that because of social media, and then what happens if this person doesn't show up today? What's the domino effect to my team? How does it impact the guest service? Are people stealing from us, right? Another thought that's going through our head. And stealing is more than just money. Are they giving products away to their friends? They're stealing our time, obviously. But, what other level of theft is happening that, is hitting my bottom line? What happens when people don't execute the products correctly? They overportion, or say you're in a restaurant and they put double the portion size on, this is the kind of stuff that just keeps eroding away, right? And this pressure just keeps building. What about food safety? What if they don't follow food safety and they make someone sick? What's the impact then? Right? So you can see that these domino effects, they just piles the stress and the pressure onto business owners, but it's directly impacting the profitability, and this pressure just builds and builds and builds. What fuels this quiet quitting? And I think there's a number of things that fuel it. It's not just on the company. It's not just on the employee. There's a blend of both. So let's talk a little bit about each side of the aisle, if you will, right? Yes, there's some horrible bosses out there. And think about it. If you're a burnt out boss and if you're disengaged, your team doesn't have a chance, because if the boss is a moody asshole that's disengaged, then guess what? That's going to spill down and funnel right down to the rest of the team. But let's talk for a minute about employees, right? This is more of a problem that's out of our control as business owners. There's a lot of toxicity that happens with our teams and our employees, things that they bring with them into the environment that fuels this quiet quitting. Think about, you have a team member, an employee, and you're not sure which one shows up, right? They keep you guessing. In front of you, they say the right things, they do the right things, but when they go out and you're not standing next to them, they do something entirely different. So think one thing's happening and really it's another. So this is a character issue, a character flaw that happens with many of our team members, and many of these not engaged employees. They yes you to death and then they go do whatever they want, right? How about victim projecting, right? How many times if, you say something to someone, it may be innocent, and then they go out and they're like, oh, I'm always getting yelled at. All you did was say, hey, I need you to take the trash out, and you yelled at them. So what they do is you get these people, it doesn't matter what you say, but you're yelling at them all the time, and then that's what they go complain about onto the floor, right? So this drags down the engagement, and especially if you got someone else that's with them that's not engaged, and they're like, well, why are we even going to do that? Because, they're just going to yell at us. So this victim projecting is really bad. How about this, when people bring this real selfish, immature behavior with them? I had this girl and I actually saw this in my organization, and I saw it at a client's organization. So this particular, on each side, it was a woman both times, that they were complaining that the company, wasn't paying them enough. They couldn't afford their rent. They couldn't pay their bills. Come to find out, shortly thereafter, both of them got tattoos. So they had $900 tattoo appointments. But then they're blaming the company that the company doesn't pay enough money because they made a bad decision in their life. You made the decision to get a tattoo and not pay your rent, and then how is that the company's fault? But see, this is all what fuels this quiet quitting. And this particular piece is out of our, right? But we become the blame for it. We become the mechanism that gets attacked. How about people that there's always a crisis? Doesn't matter what, it's sunny out, it's beautiful, it's 72 degrees, and the sky's falling in on them. And they bring that into work with them. This crisis, this 911, everything always sucks. Everything's always a mess. Someone's always attacking them. It's always someone else is destroying something, and this compounds the problem within the organization because they bring this stuff with them. How about the people that, you start having a conversation with them, you got to talk to them, and then they leave the conversation unfinished. So then you go to message them and they don't respond. Now, flip that around. If they were to message you, they get frustrated if you don't respond immediately. They'll text you 10 times, but you text and you hear crickets, right? So this is a problem too. How about people's lack of being able to problem solve? This is a big one. They have a problem in their life, so what's the first thing that they do? Oh my God, I got a problem, so I can't go to work, I got to call in. When it could be as simple as just saying, switching with someone or doing just a couple little simple moves, a little bit of communication, but no, they just cannot solve their own problem. They don't have the skill set. Now, I bet you if they were on their own, you told them there was $1 million, hanging up on a wire 500 feet from the ground, they'd figure out how to get up there and get the $1 million. But yet when they're in this environment and they have a problem, it becomes your problem, right? Their problem becomes our problem, but your problem is your problem, okay? And this happens over and over again. How about these people that, you're trying to have a conversation with them, or you're trying to tell them something, and they bring up some irrelevant stuff from something that happened 6 months ago. You're trying to deploy or give out some things that have to be accomplished, some cleaning lists or whatever it is, some deployment things, and they're frustrated because Sally did some shit 3 months ago. Right? It's like it doesn't even belong in this conversation, but they bring this irrelevant stuff into the conversation. Again, this is all fueling this quiet quitting. How about people that you're trying to give them some direction and they don't like the way that you're talking to them? They're not focusing on what you're saying. They're only focusing that maybe, you said something a little sarcastically. So they don't hear anything that you tell them because, they're just the tone, they don't like it. Now, then let's funnel this down to displaced anger, displacing blame. Maybe their father yelled at them, or their mother yelled at them, or their boyfriend or their girlfriend yelled at them, or they had an argument with them. So now it doesn't matter what you say, you become the attack mechanism. They're displacing that onto you. And this happens over and over again. Today's episode is sponsored by Smart Systems. Are you tired of your best people being poached? Stolen? Smart helps you create unpoachable rock stars. Check out the link below today. Have you ever heard of the hustle culture? This is a bad one today. So the hustle culture, what we've done as a society is it seems like we want to project to everybody all the stuff that we have to do today, or we have to do this week, or what we've got coming up. And then what two people will do is they'll try to, like the Joneses, they'll try to one-up each other. I've seen this so many times over and over again, especially in clients, where someone will come in and they'll start telling you, oh, I had to do all this stuff today. Now they're coming into work, and now they're coming into work not engaged because they're tired, because they're exhausted, because they had to do all these things. And then now all of a sudden it's like work is the last box that they have to check, right? So they come in and they're complaining, oh, I had to do this, I had to go to the kids' school, I had to do that, which this stuff happened, right? But is it really, now you're being paid to provide a function for the company, and now you're not providing that function because you had to do all these other things and you can't segregate it. And then what's funny is the person they're having the conversation with is trying to one-up them. Oh, me too. I didn't get any sleep and I had to do this and it's just now you've got two people that are disengaged and they're supposed to be working. They're getting paid now to work, and all they're talking about is all these other things that happen in their life, right? Because, they're hustling and doing all this stuff, but now it's time to work and they can't work because of it. Craziness. So let's talk about now the leadership side. We're going down the aisle. We've talked about some of the toxic stuff that employees do to us, but what about leadership, right? What things are we doing wrong, or what things are we not paying attention to? Maybe because our managers are engaged or not engaged, or maybe, as upper managers, we're not really focusing on this stuff or pushing our management team to funnel this stuff down, right? I've seen this over and over and over again with clients, that there's a lack of understanding of what people is expected of them. We don't do a great job at telling people what they're supposed to do. We kind of assume that they've been trained and they know what they got to do. Well, you're the opener, so you just do all the opening stuff. But we're not reiterating that and reteaching it and making sure they understand all the terminology and what we mean when we say this, right? And this happens over and over again. This creates a ton of frustration. This creates a ton of disengagement. This fuels a lot of this quiet quitting. And this communication and deploying and making people understand what their role is vital to the company's success. Then there's a misalignment, a constant misalignment of what people, think that maybe they're thinking we expect too much out of them, right? And I've heard this over and over again. If we don't get the compensation piece right and we don't get the culture piece right, where people, I don't get paid enough to do all these things that the company's making me do. Or let's flip that around, right? Because I've seen this as well, where people don't give you a lot and then they get frustrated with their compensation. Well, I'm not making enough money to pay my bills. Well, the problem is you're telling me you can't work weekends and you can't work the rest of the days that end in Y. Well, that's a problem, because if you can't do all this stuff, how am I supposed to pay you? So, this is a door that swings both ways, but yet, the company has to do a really good job at telling people what we want, what we expect, how you get compensated over and over and over again. And we have to constantly be doing it. Even if you just did it, well, maybe it's been 30 days, we got to do it again. This is another one that one of the things that when we come in with Smart is we really want to show people how they can advance, right? What's the roadmap to more money? What things that you have to do that the company needs that is essential for you to grow and for the company to get the results that it needs? This is huge. We don't do this well as organizations. And what about just, giving people like a meaningful conversation or recognition when they do something good, when they do something good? We don't even say thank you enough. This is crazy. So can we solve this quiet quitting problem? Well, I don't know if we're going to 100% ever solve it. I think there's always going to be people that are disengaged and engaged, but man, we can do a great job at reducing it down and flipping some of those numbers into our favor, where we have more engaged people. Imagine, right, if we took that 30% engagement number and just doubled it, what would your organization look like? What would the company look like? The solution that we found here at Smart is it's with management, being a better boss. It's amazing how many times we have to teach managers just how to have conversations again with people, how to have real conversations with people. And that's the first thing they'll say is, oh, I talk to my people, when really they don't. And, managers are in this unique position. You're in direct contact with your team. You can know your employees as individuals. So this goes a long, long way to heading off a lot of these problems that happen with quiet quitting. But don't confuse this with understanding all the drama in their life and their Facebook posts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having meaningful coaching conversations, with one of your employees. When was the last time that you did that? I mean, think about, do you remember the last time you sat down individually, not in a group, and talked to someone one-on-one and coached them, found out, what they were feeling? And for instance, we have a drive-through and it's the winter and someone was frustrated about, it's cold, right? We got to drive through the window and it's cold. So I brought them in, we had to talk about it. And what we settled on was flipping people around. right? So we made a little pivot and an adjustment. And now when we deploy our people in the morning, we say to them, hey, after about an hour, I want you to switch, right? So just this little move got people to engage, and they don't feel like they're stuck there, in this one position. So, as managers, one of our jobs is to unblock people, right? Unblock the things that are holding people back, unblock the things that they're not seeing, and engage and motivate them. And we really got to have a lot of patience with this, because you're not going to solve these problems by having one conversation. And this is what a lot of managers think as we go into other people's companies, is they think, well, I did do that. Well, that's one. You did it once. Okay, so we probably have to do it 100 more times now before we actually start to see these massive results that we're after. It takes a lot of time, and the biggest thing that we have to do is line up the goals and priorities. We have to connect with people on what they want to do, right? We talked about removing those barriers, unblocking those things, providing that coaching and that feedback, right? Saying thank you. And it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate that so many managers do the absolute opposite of this, right? We have the solution sitting right in front of us, but it's easy to say, hard to do, and they do 100%, they go the opposite way, right? And this is how they slowly erode the employment pool. It takes a little time, but it's like the plane is flying and then it just starts to dip down and they never seem to get it back up, and things just seem to get worse and worse and worse. So what matters most is that you take the time, you create the time, to keep your finger on the pulse and eliminate this stuff before it happens. So in the end, we're not going to ever solve these problems as leaders if we don't think differently. We got to do things different than the way we used to do it. We have to be as real and vulnerable as we're expecting them to be. So if we're not real and vulnerable, how do we expect our teams and our employees to do this? People do their best work when they run on passion, right? Not when the leaders have a stick and they go around and they're hitting people. So, all right, better bosses. That is the solution to fixing this quiet quitting problem. I'm going to see you next time. Thank you for watching today. I want you to do 3 things. Remember those 3 things we talked about. You got to like this podcast or video. You got to hit subscribe, and you got to hit that notification bell so you can see when we drop the next episodes. So thanks so much. Ciao for now.